If you get one chance to check anything off your bucket list, it should be the opportunity to meet and know an A-plus human being. Unfortunately for me, I never got a chance to meet Joseph F. Carrari, who was by far an A-plus human being.
Sergeant First Class Reese. Staff Sergeant Calhoun. Staff Sergeant Collins. Staff Sergeant Carreri. Staff Sergeant Joseph Carreri. Sergeant Joseph F. Carreri.
Guy Joe. Joe was born at 9 pounds, some ounces, 9 pounds, 1.5 ounces. He was always a big boy. He was always big in the sense that he was physically big. He was bigger than life. He just had that kind of personality. Joe's presence always filled the room. I always used to think to myself, this boy's in a hurry to take in every single minute.
I think can be pretty tough. You know, there are cliques and there's the popular kids and there's the other kids, and you know, just like in any school environment with teenagers like that. And there was a particular student in his school who I think struggled sort of socially and academically and was not necessarily the most popular guy, and Joe really brought this person into his circle of friends and made sure that he was going to prom with them, and was just really very much part of his group. And this person ended up coming to Joe's funeral, and I think it just really speaks to that.
Just in general, Joe, from the first day I met him, like I said, for a 22-year-old, he was constantly trying to better himself. I've never met anyone who worked on themselves internally and also externally as well, as much as Joe did. And without judgment of other people, he was just judging himself mainly and wanting to be the best he could. And it wasn't necessarily a competitive thing, although of course that helps, you know, with sports and in the Army, and when you're going through training to be Green Beret, you have to be a little bit competitive, but it was mainly he was competitive with himself and constantly pushing.
Let's see, I would say right from the very beginning I saw signs that Joe was an A-plus human being, because he always had such kindness and compassion in his soul, while at the same time he had fire in his spirit. So if there was a hurt animal outside, whether it was a squirrel or a dog he wanted to drag home astray, or...
Yeah, I think it's sort of a combination of qualities that makes someone A+, and I think it's something that's very hard to attain, because we all have our faults and we all have strengths in one area and weaknesses in other areas. But I think generally it's someone who stays very true to themselves.
Because he always had a smile on his face. He was always ready to have a laugh, you know, for friends. He was just a really good person, good soul. Never had a malicious bone really in his body. And if he did, I mean, obviously he's not perfect. I mean, if he did go that way, he immediately tried to correct it. And he apologized for if he ever was wrong. He was the first one to admit it.
His sister swam. His sister had asthma, and so she swam, and so I just automatically enrolled Joe in swimming. I wanted him to be safe and learn how to swim. And then we belonged to a summer swim team, Campus Cabana, and he joined the team, and he was the superstar. And he loved to swim, and he did it probably from about the age of 6 until, no, probably about the age of 5 until maybe 8, and then he started doing year-round swimming.
He would blast classical music, you know, in his bedroom as an 11-year-old. I don't know many people who would do that. And, you know, he'd listen to the 1812 Overture to pump himself up, you know, not only at home but at swim meets, and his friends would look at him like he was crazy while they listened to Led Zeppelin or the Beatles or whatever it was, you know.
And with Joe, one of his strengths was that he was a leader. He was filled with spirit. He won the Josh Illick Spirit Award in college, one of the greatest awards on the USC swim team. He was captain of his high school water polo and swim team because he was filled with spirit and enthusiasm. And that same spirit and enthusiasm, you know, when Joe was growing up, he struggled. He went through a divorce of his dad and I, and he was sad. And, you know, in college, in high school, he was very sheltered. He was a competitive swimmer. A lot of times he didn't go out to parties or, you know, on weekends and nights he was busy training. So when he got to college, you know, he went to USC, lots of the Trojan spirit, and he got in some trouble. And, you know, he ended up in his senior year of college. His coach told him he had to step down from being captain because he had been out drinking. And, you know, his coach said that he couldn't go on being the captain, and it broke Joe's heart. And it really reformed his identity because in hitting that bottom, it also sent him soaring to the top, because when Joe suffered that loss and that sadness, he could have given up. You know, he had a path to choose. He could have gone one way or the other. He could have decided, I'm going to just be sad and mad and angry and just give up and party and have fun. Or he could have said, hey, you know what? I've got to step up to the plate and face the fact that, you know, I did something wrong. I was drinking when my coach warned me, and he completely stopped drinking, completely on his own, never touched a drink again, turned his life over to God, and dedicated himself to a life of service by serving his country. So even though growing up, you know, he had to go through some struggles, he turned those struggles around to make himself an A+ human being. So I'm sure he'd like me to share with all the young people out there, if you hit obstacles in your life and you suffer loss and, you know, maybe poverty, maybe the death of one of your parents, or whatever hardships go on in your life, don't give up. You know, keep fighting for what is right and make yourself that A+ human being. Even if, you know, you get in some trouble in school, your grades go down, you falter, you make some mistakes, all mistakes can be turned around. So I think Joe would say, just don't give up. Keep striving to be the very best you can be.
You know, well-educated, smart person, someone the Army should want, or the Navy, I should say, should want. And just because he has one ailment in his back that he was honest about, most people aren't honest about on his application form, I guess you could say, they automatically disqualified him without even talking to him or looking at him. So he fought for those 2 years.
To Joe in L.A. Hi, Joe.
Hi, Hugh. Morning glory.
Evening grace, sir.
Well, I wanted to start off by saying that I agree totally with your assessment that in the future, men and women of our generation are going to need to have military service if they hope to attain political office. Just to give you a little background on myself, went to the University of Southern California after graduating, I spent 2 years trying to get into the military because I had had a back injury while I was in college.
Are you sure it wasn't because they were suspicious about the degree?
Oh, I knew you were going to say something
Go ahead.
about that. But anyway.
You know what? The other thing is, if you were in the band, they were certain you couldn't march.
We'll see on January 2nd.
All right. Go on. Tell me more.
Anyway, I chose to enlist in the Army, and the reason being was that the Army specifically has a program that allows you to go straight into Special Forces. Well, obviously, you have to pass all of the prerequisites and qualify. I did so. I'm happily a part of 1st Special Forces Group based out of Fort Lewis in Washington.
Oh, wow. Thanks for your service. What are you doing down in L.A. on a little vacation?
I'm on leave. I'm visiting my wife, which, you know, it kind of ties into the topic that you've raised.
You bet it does. You're it, Joe. You're exactly what I'm talking about. Why did you do this?
Well, there really wasn't a choice for me. 9/11 happened my senior year. It was a really difficult choice for me as to whether I wanted to finish my degree or just go straight into the military. I mean, when I saw what had happened on the morning of 9/11, it really affected me on a fundamental level. And I just couldn't imagine growing up and having to tell my children that, you know, I watched this happen and I decided to do nothing.
You know, Joe was a very good writer and a very passionate writer, and so I have to say that it isn't just one letter. In every letter, I find something that I can reflect on every day to make myself more of an A+ human being. But my favorite thing, of course, was when he told me how much he loved me, he missed me, but especially when he told me about how much he loved his wife, his sister, and how proud he was to serve his country and how much it meant to him. I know that even though Joe only lived 27 years, he packed every minute of every day he did more in 27 years than many people do in a lifetime. And I want to say that Joe and many of our soldiers are more than soldiers, they're humanitarians. Joe was building a hospital in the Philippines. He was rebuilding a school the terrorists had blown up. He was doing veterinary work. He was giving medical injections. He was doing pulling teeth for children on the island, Holo Island. So a lot of us think of, you know, just soldiers and we equate them with war and fighting, but they're doing humanitarian efforts. They're teaching. They're role models. So that's really important to me.
Silver wings upon their chests. These are men, America's best. 100 men will test today, but only 3 win the Green Beret. Back at home, a young wife waits. A Green Beret has met his fate. He has died for those oppressed, leaving her his last request. Put silver wings on my son's chest. Make him one of America's best. He'll be a man they'll test one day. Have him win the Green Beret. I love you, son.